All right. I'll post this slide deck later. It's just I'm not gonna like share the whole thing, so I kind of want to see what I'm gonna get through before we kind of I share the deck with you. Um, but you can follow along with me right now. Can everyone see the presentation? Is anyone having issues seeing or hearing what I'm looking at? Contour drawing. It's a drawing of a hand. I'm gonna trust that you can see. All right, cool. Thank you so much, Gio. Yeah, wow, that glare is astounding. All right, everyone. So we're gonna be talking about contour drawing today. Contour is gonna be our next unit. We are continuing kind of the theme of using lines in art, right? So last unit we were talking about these, straight, even lines that we created with a ruler, right? To create the illusion of like a three-dimensional room. Now we're going to be kind of using the lines in a different way. So the lines are going to be a little bit more organic, as you can see, and they're going to be expressing a form or a shape, a form, really. A form is three-dimensional, a shape is two-dimensional. We're going to be expressing three-dimensional objects on paper, right? So the same kind of style of work that we were doing before, except now we're just going to be focusing in on like all the nitty-gritty details and trying to express these forms using only one single line. So if you kind of look at this drawing, you might not have noticed before, but the whole thing is done, I believe, with one single line. So they've gone over, outlined the object and the hand, and gone back through and added some details, right? But anytime that they have to like, I don't know, there's a lot of retracing over lines, as you can see, kind of in the thumb area, thumbnail, kind of the shadow between the thumb and the hand, even on the fingernails as well, right? There's a lot of retracing over lines, and that's one of the things that Contour has that you have to do when you're using Contour. So this is kind of an example of what we're doing. This is also a blind contour drawing, so I believe, unless the person was cheating, this person drew this hand not looking at their paper, but only looking at what they were drawing, which was probably their hand. I mean, I hope it was their hand. Otherwise, it'd be weird. So this is kind of a taste of what we're going to be doing. Contour drawing is kind of interesting, I think, in a couple different respects. But here's kind of just the basic idea of contour. So there's no correct way to draw. I hate just reading, so I'm not going to do it. So the basic gist of this slide is just saying that a lot of people tend to kind of throw their hands up and just kind of resign themselves to the idea that, I'm not a good drawer, I can't draw, I'm not going to draw, right? And what I've tried to do with the past couple of units is kind of try to debunk that theory. So last unit we were using a ruler, which is using an aid to help you draw, which I think worked out for a lot of people. Some people got frustrated, I understand. What we're going to be doing in this unit is kind of changing the way we look at objects slightly, and just really paying attention to detail, and also just going through a lot of practice. And it's easy to practice something that you're very good at. That's enjoyable, right? If you can think of, a video game or a sport or, a craft, something that you're very good at, cooking, right? Something that you're very good at. It's easy to practice that, right? Because you feel successful every time you do that activity. You get a little bit better at it, right? No one is like an amazing chef or an amazing drawer or an amazing football player, basketball player, hockey player overnight, right? It doesn't happen immediately. You are not born with all the skills necessary to be like an Olympic or a pro athlete, right? It takes practice, it takes time, and it takes effort. And those are all things those are all things that you need to get better at drawing. And that's kind of what this slide is saying. So it's not part of the unit and part of this style of drawing, contour drawing, isn't necessarily to be beautiful. It's meant to help you learn how to draw better, right? So it's kind of like an exercise. It looks cool. I think it looks cool, right? I mean, if you're talking about, oh my gosh, there we go. If you're talking about, a drawing like this, I think it looks interesting. It's not necessarily something you're going to put in a museum, but I think it looks cool. But it is designed, this way of drawing is designed to help you draw better, right? So it's all about improvement. It doesn't matter where you are. You could be an expert drawer. You could be, you've never picked up a pencil before, which is none of us, right? But you can improve, and you can improve in such a way that you're able to draw in contour. So real quick, let's check out a demo and just kind of see how this goes. Let me know if the audio's weird.
This is a demonstration in contour line drawing. Contour line is when you draw the edges of objects, things, colors, shapes, textures, etc. So when you're drawing with contour line, you're focusing and you're acting as though your eye and your pencil move at the exact same pace. So as your eye looks along an edge, let's say the edge of your finger, it follows the edge and your hand follows and records at the exact same time. The goal here is to train your eyes and your hand to move in the same pace, but also to focus more of your attention on your subject rather than your paper itself. So this is a blind contour. I'm not going to look at my paper. I'm just going to look right at my subject, and I'm going to start by drawing my thumb. As I follow the edge with my eyes, I record all the bumps and irregularities that I see in the edge of my thumb. And then when I come to an intersection where my thumb meets my thumbnail, I record the edge of my thumbnail and I follow it in. And if there are wrinkles or lines that follow out from the edge of my thumbnail, I let my pencil follow it as my eye follows those little wrinkles. And I bring it back. And any irregularity in my cuticle, and things like that. The drawing itself is not as important as the exercise. The practice it gives you is invaluable in focus. And as I see wrinkles on the inside of my thumb, I won't pick up my pencil but drag it in. And you see these little wrinkles. I go over the lines and I bring my pencil back. If you pick up your pencil, you start to think more about what is happening on your paper and you lose your focus. So it's better to not pick it up, but just to go back and forth over the lines you see and continually draw. I also press harder where I like the lines to be darker and a little less pressure applied when I'd like the lines to be light. And as I continue down my thumb, I see more lines, less significant. And so there's my thumb drawing. It's not an exact copy, but you can see in some areas where I was really trying to replicate the details that I saw in my thumb, like in my cuticle and the white part of my thumbnail. So looking back, this is what I was looking at. And this is contour line drawing. It's excellent practice. You can do it as much as you like, and the more the better.
So there you go. Just wanted to kind of get you an idea of what drawing in contour looks like. And again, as she said, this is, something that's meant to help you improve your drawing. It's not necessarily something that's meant to be super beautiful. So you can kind of let go of that portion of, I need to draw something. It needs to look exactly like the original, right? That's not what we're doing. We're trying to kind of train your eye and your hand to work together eye-hand coordination. Maybe you've heard of it. And we're trying to kind of, get your eyes and your hand to work together. And that was a blind contour drawing, right? So she was looking only at her thumb, not at the actual paper. So we're going to try that. All these things we're going to try. And we're just going to have a lot of practice of this, so it may seem repetitive at times. But we are going to do, you have to practice, right, in order to get better. And that's what we're going to do. So, yeah. Moving forward. So just talking real quick about, like, kind of the biology of drawing and how your brain kind of reacts. Very simply, very straightforward. So you have two different sides of your brain, right? You have the left half and you have the right half. The left side of the brain is where you kind of mostly what you use every day to solve problems, right? If you're talking about math, even reading, things that I don't know, like typical tasks of people who are very rational, people who are very logical, right? That's all going to be on your left side of your brain. Your right side is more the creative side. So if you have someone who, artists typically are going to be very right brain dominant. Whereas if you have someone like an accountant or a lawyer, right, they're going to be very left brain dominant, if that makes sense. So yeah, people who draw with the left side of their brain tend to be technique oriented and stiff. What we're trying to do is to get you to trust your eyes, right? So when you draw, or when everyone draws, you use kind of that logical side of your brain. You're like, hey, I have a hand. I'm going to draw a hand. This hand has 5 fingers. So I have to have, you have an idea of what you're drawing, and you're not looking specifically at the thing that you're drawing. You're trying to draw the concept of your idea of a hand rather than what you're actually seeing. And we've addressed this in different projects, right? We addressed it in the Scratchboard project. To some extent, we were actually using the left side of the brain, the logical side, to create our 1-point perspective drawing, because it's all based on technique, right? It's all based on these orthogonal lines, the horizontal lines, the vertical lines. That is, the main event of that perspective unit. Now we're trying to switch hemispheres, right? We're switching sides of the brain. We're going to try to be looking at just what you see with your eyes, not the idea of what you see with your eyes, which will make more sense later, but there is a difference. As I mentioned before, we're dealing with one long continuous line. That is a challenge, right? Usually for people to draw that way. It's not how we draw traditionally, but it does help you kind of be more specific and more intentional about where you put your lines and where you don't put your lines. It increases the quality of your lines, and it also, it lets you focus on what lines are necessary and what lines are unnecessary, which is definitely something we talked about with the Scratchboard project as well, or at least something in the back of the Scratchboard project that we were trying to get. Again, improving eye-hand coordination. You've probably heard that term before, especially with sports, right? If you have strong eye-hand coordination, usually you're a little bit better at sports. If you don't, it's difficult to play, especially ball sports, if you have poor eye-hand coordination. If you're a runner, it doesn't really matter, right? Or eye-foot coordination. I'm just thinking about soccer, but yes, if you're dealing with like a finesse sport, a ball sport, then you're probably going to need that eye-hand coordination. If you're dealing with like professional weightlifters or track stars, you don't need as much of that. But we're going to be working on your eye-hand coordination too. So if you're a basketball player, football player, soccer player, this will benefit you, not just in the classroom, but also on the field. So that's exciting. One thing that's kind of a transition we need to make with contour drawing is this idea of expressing different textures, right? So over here you can see the original image, the original object, which is a brush. When we're drawing in contour, we're trying to ignore the like colors. So you notice in the one that has a line through it, it looks similar, right? But it's trying to express that texture of the brush, and they're using way too many lines. So you can express that texture using way fewer lines, as you can see in the middle example. It looks a little bit cleaner, and you can still, your eyes still decode that texture, that hair texture of the brush, without making every single individual lines. Also, what you'll probably notice is the proper way to do contour drawing does not rely on shading at all. So that whole adding value to an object, adding value the Scratchboard project, we're not paying attention to that at all. That's done. We're not going to use it, at least for now. We are only using contour lines, which are, as its simplest version, an outline. But as you can see, there's internal lines that need to be included, right, on the brush. I would even say that like this should be a line, and these reflection should be included as well. But this slide is meant to just show you that you don't want to do too much when it comes to textures, but every other contour line, you really want to be hyper focused on all those details. The only difference really, the only time that you're going to be using shading, which is, it's not shading, but you can make a, one second, you can make a darker line where you need to, and you can make a lighter line where you need something that's a little bit lighter, but you're just varying the thickness or the weight of your line. You're not really shading anything at all. So less to do, right? Sorry. All right, so this is just a list of things to remember. I don't want to miss any of them, so I'm just going to go down the list. As you probably saw in that YouTube video, the woman was drawing very slowly, right? She took a good 3 minutes to draw one thumb, right? And that's important. You want to make sure that you're getting every single detail. You want to make sure that you're using one continuous line. It's important to go slow and deliberately. So you should not be drawing in a sketchy manner, which, if you're drawing a bunch of like skinny hairlines, right? We all do it. I'm super guilty of it. That's just how I've learned to draw over the years. But this style of drawing should be smooth and continuous, not sketchy, if that makes sense. Contour lines are made up of only lines, no shading. We just talked about that. So you're not putting any value into these drawings. You're only using lines. Lines should follow the contours of your still life object. We kind of talked about that as well. So the contour of an object is related to the outline of the object, but it is more than just the outline of the object. The internal details are important as well. So you're not just outlining an object, calling it a day, right? You're trying to get all those internal details in addition to that outline, and that's what's called contour. For added interest, you can modify the thickness of your line, darker lines for major lines, lighter lines for softer implied lines or edges, which we also just talked about as well. So you're not doing value, you are adjusting the thickness or the weight of your line. For an extra challenge, you can use a marker instead of a pencil. Sometimes I, especially as we progress through this project, like to tell people to use a pen. If you don't have a felt tip marker, that's okay, like a Sharpie or something like that. I would recommend a ballpoint pen though, as we get further into practicing. Pencil's totally fine to start out with, but using a pen later on helps you be more intentional, right? You can't erase, you can't go back. So we'll get to that later on, but that's one of the things to remember. Contour drawing is a way to practice and improve. It's not necessarily a finished product, right? It's not a piece of art. You're not going to do contour drawing usually outside of an art classroom, right? So this is a way to learn. It's not necessarily, a finished product. That being said, I do know a few artists who make their living on contour drawings, and I'll show you some examples of that as well. Yeah, we touched on this briefly. When you're drawing, you really want to make sure to use that right side of your brain, the creative side. So you're really looking at what you're drawing and you're trying to reproduce that. You are not reproducing the idea of the drawing that you're looking at. So the human brain is really good, the best at looking at an object, breaking it down, classifying it, and moving it off to the side. You're trying to do the exact opposite, right? You're trying to look at an object for exactly what it is, see it exactly how it looks to you, and then try to recreate that as best you can. So there's two different things there, and some people are strong in one and weak in another. Some people are weak in both. Some people are strong in both. But you have to see and understand, and then you have to recreate that drawing using a contour line. And those are difficult things to do, and it requires a lot of practice. But yes, it's super important. It's one of the most important things that I would like to teach you this year is seeing a thing exactly how it is, not how you imagine it to be. Which sounds very meta and monk-ish, but it's tough to learn. Once you understand it, you see things a lot differently. Here are just some examples of contour drawings, right? We got one on the left, which is mediocre, and we got one on the right, which is pretty amazing. You can see the varying lines on the foot. You have some thick lines, you have some thin lines, right? You have some darker lines that are more important. You have some thinner, lighter implied lines on the foot, kind of illustrating where the folds in the skin or bumps and ridges and things like that are. So you can kind of see where adding those details really brings your drawing to life for sure. Yeah, looks like the left might be, so this is just, practice. These are both examples of contour drawing. I believe the one on the left is blind, right? So it helps to redo the same thing over and over and over again, drawing your eyes or someone else's eyes. Ooh, that's cool. We can do that. Drawing a face using one single line. I believe the drawing to the right is the same way, right? So figuring out what lines need to be drawn, what lines need to be omitted or left out. And if you do it correctly, it looks pretty cool, I think. And it really helps you improve your drawing in general. So these are all sketchbook assignments. This is not my PowerPoint. This is someone else's. So we will be doing something like this, but we might not do these assignments exactly. So you don't have to write these down or remember these in any way. But hand drawing is a really good way to practice your contour drawing, as you can see. You can also draw shoes. Shoes are another really good way to practice. Usually there's a lot of details in shoes to be captured, not only the laces, but also the designs on the shoes. That's also an option as well. There we go, shoes again. Yeah, and blind contour is another one we're going to do. As you can see, these look a little bit weird, right? A little bit off. It doesn't look like an artist drew them. But it's a good way to practice, right? So again, linking your hand with your eye is super important. And the only way to do that is kind of to separate them, force them to work together in order to draw something that is, more and more increasingly complicated. I think, the rest of this is irrelevant, but I'll just leave it right there. What kind of questions do we have? Just trying to get an overview.